Math 3, Unit 1, Lesson 4, Practice 1.4.1, Estimating Sample Proportions. So, for problems 1 to 5, use the given information to calculate the sample proportion, okay? Written by that symbol, also called p hat. Yeah, I didn't make that one up. That's actually somebody else. Okay, and that's equal to the p over n. So n, remember, is the number of your sample, and p is the number of favorable outcomes, so what you want to happen. So, a recent opinion poll found that 245 out of 250 people are opposed to a new tax. So p hat would be R's, 245, over the total, 250. And then we type that in a calculator and find what the decimal would be. Okay? So I type that in, and we end up with 0.98, which we like to do it as percents. So we say 98% of the people are opposed to the new tax. So now it says it wants us to find the standard error of the proportion, SEP. So basically, we say 98% are opposed to the new tax, but what is the error of that? Okay? Because when we do this sampling proportions, we're trying to use that to estimate our for the whole population. So we have an error that we have to realize. And the SEP is found by taking the square root of your p hat times 1 minus the p hat divided by n. Okay, so we calculated p hat, that's right there, and then n was 250. That was our total number. So I'd go square root of 0.98, because I put it back in decimal to solve with, times 1 minus 0.98 divided by 250. Okay, and that's our SEP. So we do that. So I'd go 0.98 times 1 minus 0.98, which gives me 0.0196 divided by 250. And I can put the whole thing in the calculator, because that's a lot easier to do, and it'll just spit out my information. And so then I go 0.0196 divided by 250, and I get 0.1234784. Okay, really small. And then we take the square root of that, which gives us 0.00885437774, which we round to the nearest hundredth. So I look behind that. 8 would round up to 0.01, so our SEP would be 0.01. Or, if we think about it, would we make this a percent? Nope. So it would be 0.01, which would be our deviation from the actual measure. Okay, so that's kind of like our error, that it's 0.01 off of that 98% in reality, most likely. Okay, so that's what we're going to be using, okay, to get our information. Alright, so let's take a look now at the next one, number 2. Okay, so give me some space to work with. So, we want to find the p hat of this. Marine biologists catching tuna for research found that 16 out of 28 tuna had elevated mercury levels. So our sample proportion would be 16 over 28. Okay, so 16 divided by 28 gives me 0.5714, rounding to the nearest hundredth would be 0.57, or 57%. Okay, now to find the SEP, okay, we would go the square root of p hat, which is 0.57, times 1 minus 0.57 over 28, and we take the square root of that. So I would just do this in my calculator, basically. I would put the square root of 0.57 times 1 minus 0.57, okay, and then I would divide that by 28. and then I'd hit enter. Okay, I'm just going to type it into my calculator like that because that's really the easiest way to do things. And I would get 0.0935, rounding to the nearest hundredth. Look behind, it's lower than 5, so 0.09 would be my SEP, that error. Okay, number 3. A new window screen was found to block 1,400 out of 1,540 types of insects from getting through the window. So for p hat, we go 1,400 over 1,540. Okay, type that in my calculator. We get 0.90909. Round to the nearest hundredth, that would give me 91%, right? That would be 0.91, which would be 91%. Then to find my SEP, we would go square root of that 0.91 times 1 minus 0.91 over 1,540, and we'd take the square root of that. And so that's what I'd type into my calculator, that same information. Okay, and then I would just hit enter. Once again, you could do it all, calculate it all by yourself if you wanted to, but it's a lot easier to do it just in the calculator once you set it up right. So rounding to the nearest hundredth, that would bump that up to 0.01 for my SEP. Okay, number 4, same process. For p hat, we would go, the local meteorologist has been correct in predicting temperatures on 11 out of the past 14. So for that sample proportion, 11 over 14 would give me 0.7857, so round that up to 79%, right? That would round up to 9. We turn it into a decimal, and we get 79%. Then for the SEP, it would be 0.79 times 1 minus 0.79 over 14, take the square root of it, and we would end up with that. So 0.79 times 1 minus 0.79 over 14, hit enter, we get 0.1088, so rounding to the nearest tenth or hundredth would be, I would round up to 0.11, and that's my SEP. Okay, number 5, a gymnast landed without stumbling during 7 out of 13 routine practices. So p hat would be 7 over 13, which would give me 0.538, so round that up to 54%. And what is my SEP? That would be 0.54 times 1 minus 0.54, so it's just using these two formulas, putting in your information, and then using a calculator to calculate those percents. So I go in and type it in again, hit enter, and we get 0.138, or basically rounding it 0.14 would be the answer we're looking for there. Alright, so it's just going back and using those two p hat and then the SEP formulas. Alright, number 6. Use what you have learned about the sample proportion p hat and the standard error of proportion SEP to solve problem 6 through 10. Round p hat to the nearest whole percent and round the SEP to the nearest hundredth. So nearest hundredth is basically what we're doing. A poll found that 30% of 300 residents polled were opposed to having a state-sponsored lottery. What is the SEP? So on this one, they already basically gave us the p hat. It would be 30% or 0.30. So for our SEP, we just go square root of 0.3 times 1 minus 0.3, because that's 0.3 is the same as 30, over 300. We type that into our calculator, we end up with 0.026. They said round to the nearest hundredth, so that would bump it up to 0.03 for our answer. Number 7 says, a survey asked people if they would like to live to the age of 120 if doing so required undergoing special medical treatments. 56% of the 2012 respondents said they would. About how many people were in favor of undergoing special treatments if it meant living to 120? Okay, so on this one, it wants us not to find the p hat, it wants the p. Okay, That's what it's looking for. Well, we know p hat is 56%, or 0.56. We know the total number is 2012. We're looking for just the number of people. So we times by 2012. Okay, so 0.56 times 2012, which gives us about 1126.7. So we would need to round that up to 27 because we can't have 0.7 of a person. So 1,127 people said yes, they would do that. Now, to find our SEP, we still use this number. So our SEP would be equal to the square root of 0.56 times 1 minus 0.56 over 2012. And we type that into our calculator. So 0.56 times 1 minus 0.56 divided by 2012, all in the square root. We end up with 0.011. So rounding that would be 0.01 for our SEP. Alright, number 8 says, an experiment was found to have an SEP of 10% and a sample proportion of 80%. What was the size of the sample? Okay, so now we're going to have to work backwards again. So we've got a sample proportion, p hat, right, of 0.8, 80%, and the SEP was 10%, or 0.10, okay, or 0.1. So we know what this is, right? That's 0.1, or 10%, equals, we know what this part is. What we didn't know was that one. So we'd go the square root of 0.8 times 1 minus 0.8 over, no, not 2012, over n. So we're looking for n here. So the first thing we need to do to get rid of a square root is to square things. So we can square that. We can also figure out what that is. Okay, so 0.1 squared would give us 0.01. Squaring a square root cancels out. So we're left with equals 0.8 times 1 minus 0.8 over n. So 0.8 times 1 minus 0.8 will give us 0.16. So I have 0.01 equals 0.16 over n. So I'd times by n on both sides. So I'd get 0.01. Sorry, I'm kind of going crazy. Here to here, back down to here. N equals 0.16, because timesing by n would cancel them. Divide by 0.01. And n would equal 16. So we had 16 people total. That is what we're saying here. So now that we know how many people there are, you know, that gave us a total number of people in the experiment. Okay, so let's clear that. So 9 and 10. If 10,000 students enrolled at a for-profit college in the same year, and 900 of the students graduated within 6 years, what is p hat? So p would be the total, dividing the total into those that graduated, essentially. So we'd go p hat equals 900 divided by 10,000. Okay, so we'd go like that, or you could, you know, cross out some zeros. So basically 0.09, wouldn't it be? 900 divided by 10,000 would be 0.09. Okay, because 9 over 100 is 9.09 hundredths, which would turn into 9%. There's our p hat. Okay, the last one, number 10. To celebrate 24 years in business, a clothing store's marketing executive is ordering scratch-off discount coupons to give to customers. She would like 40% of the customers in the population to receive the highest possible discount. With an SEP of 0.01 for this population, how many coupons should she order? Okay, so she wants 40% of customers in the population to receive the highest possible discount. So that's our p hat, okay, 0.4, because that's the people, you know, out of the total number, 40% needs to be the ones that we want. So that's our p hat when we don't know our n. Okay, so we can go the square root of 0.4 times 1 minus 0.4 over n. Okay, and we know our SCP needs to be 0.01, so we can replace that with 0.01. Okay, so once again we solve it. So we square both sides. 0.01 squared is just 0.1, right? Or no, that was different. It would be, that was when it was 0.1. Squaring it became point. So it would be, let me think, 0.001 should be what we end up with. I take that back. I forgot 1 0. So 0.0001 would be what it's squared. Squared would take away this square root, so 0.4 times 1 minus 0.4 over n. So 0.4 times 1 minus 0.4 would give us 0.24. So we have 0.24 over n equals 0.0001. We times by n on both sides. Those cancel. Okay. Then we divide by 0.0001 to give us what n is. Okay? So 0.24 divided by 0.0001 gives us 2,400. Now, what does that 2,400 mean? That's the 0.4. So that's how many need to receive it. That's how many customers, coupons she should order for her customers.